Trump really doubled down on the whole citizenship thing. He said, you're going to have to prove that you're a citizen in order to vote at the polls.
This year, as a result of the mid-decade gerrymandering cycle that we saw, we've seen that number of competitive elections shrink even more, beyond 90%, even more, beyond 90% of U.S. House races.
You look that there is a substantial majority of folks that do want voter ID. But what you see is among independents and PPs in California and Democrats who want it, when you ask the question, do you want it, but do you trust the Republicans to do it? That's where the hangup is. They want it. They just don't trust that the Republican Party can do it.
And now that we're in 2026 in the midterms, and the Republicans are trying to find some message that will work for them under a president that polling shows is very unpopular right now, they're having the same issue of trying to convince the American people that the affordability crisis that we've seen hasn't been or isn't happening to the extent that they think it is.
All right, we're back at the Independent Voter Podcast. We got Kara back on the East Coast under the snow. Sean still hasn't left Chicago, but, you know, Ethan, I think you headed all the way out to New York or something because New York Times picked up your article on the poll we just did, and it's the latest.
Yeah, I mean, my friends over at the Times, you know, they contacted Sean. They said, we saw Ethan put out that poll the other day. We have to put that on the Times, right?
Ethan has these connections we didn't know about. So
yeah, I know. Where did that come from? No, but seriously, they reached out, and asked about methodology and what was our method? How did we do it? How did we verify? And we passed the test. And now that's really nice that they're including us in their poll. I hope they get something out of it. I mean, I think we're one of the only pollsters that we publish a data studio of the crosstabs. So not just that you have some Excel sheet that maybe some data analyst can go in there and figure out some crosstabs. You just click around check out how do Republicans feel about this? How do women Democrats feel about this? It's pretty cool. If you have a chance, go to IVN, check it out. Open up the Looker Studio. It's probably best if you're on a computer, but that's very cool. Everybody here is jealous of Ethan that was your first article. You finally pushed the publish button yourself.
Yep, first article on IVN, and I have to say I don't think it could have gone any better, right? I mean, we're right up there, right next to on top of the Emerson College one actually, because it's more recent. We'd like to think that our results are more accurate than any of those other, established.
No, we're not trashing it.
No, not that I'm talking trash.
We're actually they are for a different purpose, which we disclosed, is that we were more interested, not really so much in the horse race, but where the voter electorate is on different issues and the nuances, right? And where some Democrats are here, some are here, right? So anyway, check that out. Kara, Sean, we got some things to cover. I mean, we had State of the Union last night, a long State of the Union.
A long one.
So what do you got, Sean? What do you got?
1 hour and 47 minutes of the State of the Union, the longest.
Yeah, that made a record, right? That hit a record.
It was a record, yes.
Yep.
It was a record.
So, what surprised me about that, though, and maybe I missed it because I didn't stay up for the whole thing. Again, that's a long speech, and it's when you're on this side of the country, it gets late, when you do that. But what surprised me is that he didn't mention voter ID. He didn't mention the SAVE Act.
Yes, he did.
He did. Okay.
Oh yeah, that's
so
what happened
I
after
just
you turned
missed
it
that.
off. He got way heavy into that stuff.
Okay, because
Absolutely.
that was the big surprise for me because I figured that would be his big issue right now.
So this is a great.
He pointed at the Democrats and said, they're all cheaters.
Yeah, I remember that part. I didn't realize what he was connecting it to because I was actually at the gym while I was listening, but I do remember him saying, "Yeah, they're all a bunch of cheaters."
But I don't know why he handles that way. This is fascinating. Our poll is local in California and everything, but this is a great example of why we do these polls, right? You look that there is a substantial majority of folks that do want voter ID. But what you see is among independents and PPs in California and Democrats who want it, when you ask the question, do you want it, but do you trust the Republicans to do it? That's where the hangup is. They want it. They just don't trust that the Republican Party can do it. And part of it, I think, is because the rhetoric at the national level is, they're saying we're not doing this because we think there's a whole bunch of cheaters running around. Okay, maybe there's some of that. It's a big process, but we want to do it just to feel make sure we feel better about our elections. We don't argue about the results all the time, right?
And you have this initiative that's going to be on the California ballot. Reform California announced last week that they had gathered 1.3 million signatures. That's 100,000 more than their goal. And they submitted those signatures a month before the deadline, really to send a message that this is a popular reform and that they can get it passed. But to your point, when you look at the IVP poll and it's showing just how many people don't trust Republicans to carry the narrative on this, if they attach this initiative, which they've always said they're planning on doing, on trying to flip legislative seats and trying to win elections, that's going to be problematic for them in California, I think.
Well, it is, but they're going to do, the Democrats smartly will do the same thing they did on Prop 50 to get rid of the Independent Redistricting Commission, right? The whole campaign won't be about, do you want independent redistricting, which like 90% of people want.
Mhm.
It's not going to be about, do you want a voter ID? It's going to be, this is a Republican plot to do X, Y, Z.
To suppress the vote and to keep people from voting.
Correct. And the reality of it is this is a case where the Republicans did a responsible job and put together a voter ID that is not over the top, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but you look at the numbers, you look at the crosstabs, it's going to be a tough road for the Republicans, despite starting with, a basis that people really want it.
Mhm.
Trump, though, last night, he really doubled down on the whole citizenship thing that you're going to have to prove. I mean, I listened to him say the words, I should go back and look at it to be sure, but he said, you're going to have to prove that you're a citizen in order to vote at the polls. So you're going to be bringing your passport, of which, only half the people have those, or your birth certificate to the poll, along with, some other ID. That's
And I know
pretty
we
crazy,
talked
guys.
about, I know we've talked about before, what is blown out of proportion, what is the narrative that may be a little bit too hyperbolic. And so we talked about how on the left, the Democrats are saying, women who have been married, they changed their last name, they're going to have difficulty registering to vote and voting. And Kara, I mean, we talked a little earlier. I sent you a video of there's these women in Texas who are posting
Yep.
videos on TikTok, on X, on I'm assuming YouTube as well, talking about their experiences of even before the SAVE Act passes, they are going to vote in the primary, which is happening right now in Texas,
voting.
going to vote in the primary and being told that their registration is suspended or in suspense because someone has challenged their eligibility to vote in that county. And this is multiple women now that have come out that. So we're seeing at least some credibility to this concern even before the bill passes.
So is that how the system works? You can people can challenge another individual's validity.
I didn't really know that extent, and I was born and raised in Texas. I grew up first 25, 26 years of my life in Texas, and I could tell you a story of my own mother telling me this, that her experience voting in the primaries in the past have been she'd go to her designated polling spot and they would try to send her away to another polling location, and then she would get this
Wild.
this back and forth of people just trying to send her to different polling locations and making it difficult for her to vote. So, I mean, you hear these concerns. I think, on that side of it, yes, you have the very popular voter ID initiative side to it, but this proof of citizenship thing, it could end up being problematic this election cycle.
Which I just can't believe that it's already upon us. The election's coming so soon. And so what did you watch the State of the Union, Chad?
I mean, I was actually in a meeting late last night and driving home. I listened to some clips and stuff, but
Yep. We are the hottest, Chad.
He
We are
did-
the hottest country in the world.
you gotta at least we got a president that's out there marketing us and positive about it, right? No?
market. I mean, isn't marketing supposed to benefit the?
We are winning
Huh?
so much that we really don't even know what to do about
He says
it.
we're winning. He says we're winning.
He
So
was screaming that we were winning. He was screaming into the microphone that we are winning.
Yeah.
he was very enthusiastic about that part. He also,
I mean, but on
was-
that point, look at the other side. Is how come some of these stupid stuff, like Al Green, I don't know. Sorry if you're an Al Green fan, but I think some of that distracts from the Democrats' credibility when they object to the things that he does. Like, you don't stand to applaud for some folks, and you don't stand for some victims and things like that. Doesn't that like hurt the Democrats' own cause when they're trying to say, we have these legitimate gripes about Trump, but then They go and do things that are like disrupting the State of the Union. They're going and protesting. All this stuff is manufactured for TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. I don't know.
Well, I do understand the framing of like, it's kind of a grandstanding and like, a stunt of where they're putting this together to look good on video. But I also think if we looked back 20 years from now and we said this was the year that the president posted a video of the former president's, caricatured as apes. The first black president in the U.S. caricatured as an ape. And this was the State of the Union. And it was just completely normal. I mean, when we look back and be like, well, what were politicians
there's no question
doing back then?
that was a bad video. Okay, you can have argument about whether some staffer did it accidentally or this or that. Whatever.
Midnight?
I mean,
Like the staffer hanging
but
outside.
I'm sure it wasn't Trump posting on his own thing, right? But regardless, he didn't come and like apologize enough for it. We have all those kind of debates, but let's not forget the first time Trump was elected, Nancy Pelosi ripped up the State of the Union speech behind the president, right? So I just feel it's hard to go and grandstand and say, oh, he doesn't have any decorum. He doesn't have any of this when you don't exhibit it yourself, right? And that's not an excuse for Trump. That is a pox, I think, on the Democrats. Say, look, the reason he's in office because you guys haven't been the bigger people in the room. They went and ran all this thing. Oh, we stand when they go low, we go high. I don't see any evidence of that.
I think there's a growing online kind of cohort of Democrats that feel like they've spent so much time doing what you're saying, being the bigger person, trying to lead by example, that at this point, there's so many people fed up with that. They want to see more of the same, extremely, unfortunately, partisan rhetoric. They want to see the same, turn it back on their faces and do the same thing, like what Newsom's doing these days. But
it's
that's
the whole fight fire with fire thing, right? It's the whole thing that has driven the escalation.
That's what drives the conversation off election cycle when, wonky people that have no lives like us are listening to politics all the time. I think the general electorate, the people that are just like taking their kids to T-ball, doing the laundry and all that stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's an exhaustion with all of it. Like,
I think there is too.
Yeah.
And I think, what I find interesting with regards to the State of the Union is that Trump and the Republicans find themselves in a very similar situation that Democrats and Kamala Harris found themselves in 2024, where they're having to try to explain in their own ways how they see the economy getting better and bringing out all these metrics, talking about the stock market, talking about inflation rates lowering, talking about all of this, but they're not speaking to the average American about how they feel. Instead, it said the average American who is seeing the rise in grocery prices, seeing the rise in consumer prices, is being told you're not feeling what you're feeling.
That's right. They're saying the price of eggs is down, chicken's down, butter's down, fruit's down.
I got told,
and even beef is coming down. And soon, this is what he said last night.
I have to say
he said, soon you will see numbers that few people would think possible.
Yeah, I have to say this to both Republicans and Democrats because both have raised egg prices. Americans eat more than eggs, all right? And a lot of Americans don't even eat eggs. So
where's the
message
obsession with the non-egg eaters?
Yeah, no, good point. What's the price of oatmeal?
Just pretend like non-egg eaters don't exist.
He's saying what he's saying, Sean, is he's saying like, don't believe your own eyes. Don't believe your own grocery bill. Don't believe it when you have to buy an avocado that costs $3. Like,
right. Well, and it comes off absolutely tone deaf. And again, I say this as both sides have done this. The Democrats did it in 2024. And now that we're in 2026 in the midterms, and the Republicans are trying to find some message that will work for them under a president that polling shows is very unpopular right now. They're having the same issue of trying to convince the American people that the affordability crisis that we've seen hasn't been or isn't happening to the extent that they think it is.
Well, I mean, the other issue I think they're tone deaf on is the ICE stuff. Like they go back to, you won the election because people didn't like how open and crazy it was before. But you look back at our poll, right? It's like, but people, this hard line position of just like, let's just sweep up everybody and treat everybody the same, like, and this hardline rhetoric is like even Republicans are going like, dude, that's not what we voted for. Like, we voted to get criminals out. We voted to close the border and have a process and everything like that. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because they, Democrats do the same thing. Your point, Sean, is like they're like they're just talking to themselves and lose connection with like the real world that's not living in these like hyperbolic bubbles where like if our team doesn't win, the world's gonna end.
So well
Scrolling through
said.
their phone. Yeah, exactly. And they're, when you see a video of whatever, of someone being brutalized by the ICE agents, and you see all these comments that are also like, go get him, like, FO. Like, of course, they're like, oh, it's getting.
Yeah,
like,
one side's like exploiting the image of them of like, look, she almost ran him over. They're going to attack. This isn't just a protest, right? And that whole thing, that's their whole, thing they're focusing on, right? And then the other side goes, well, they shot her, right? Like, and so like they're focusing on two different parts and then creating the narrative from that. And the reality is like that whole situation on both sides is terrible because it's so hard line and we're not just treating each other like, okay, you have a different opinion, but we have to have the purpose of government is to come to a consensus and resolution.
There's no consensus or resolution even possible. You have half of them standing up and cheering and half of them sitting on their hands. We're so divided, Chad. How in the world is this ever going to resolve itself? You have the president calling all the Democrats are just cheaters. He thinks that, right? That
I was
he
about to
should have
say, like, it feels like to me like politics has become so much about, instead of creating a mission, it's like about creating an enemy, right? Like we're talking about the Somalian community, the Democrats, whoever it is, and also coming from the other side as well. Trump, all these, it's all about like building up how terrible the thing that you're fighting against is, as opposed to how great you are and how you can serve people.
And you say, we're talking about the election process again, but that's how the system's designed. I mean, look at closed right now. All these candidates are running in closed primaries, right?
Yeah.
Right now. Yeah. So the way they win is by being the most radical, because that's what drives turnout. Like most people aren't paying attention. Forget that they're not that partisan. They're not that engaged. They're not even going to go to the polls to participate. So they have to do something so over the top to get those hardliners off of their couch to go vote, right? And that's how they do it.
And
by,
I mean,
creating a crazy...
Yeah. How many people know that only 4.5% of U.S. House races are considered toss-ups, are
actually
considered competitive?
Less than 4.5 of people know that.
Extraordinary number.
Because of Cook Political Index comes out with their ratings of how competitive elections are every single election cycle. And this year, as a result of the mid-decade gerrymandering cycle that we saw, we've seen that number of competitive elections shrink even more, beyond 90%. Even more, beyond 90% of U.S. House races are now uncompetitive, and they're decided in these primaries where candidates are incentivized to speak to the most extreme candidates. And I think an interesting contrast to this, and I just wrote an article about this on IVN, is Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers, who just did a State of the State address, and he got standing ovations from the entire chamber. People, what I found such an interesting contrast is that before he started speaking, everyone in chamber was chanting his name. Now, this is his final State of the State address. He's not running for re-election.
But still, what in the world? I'm so glad you wrote about this, Sean. That never happens.
Yeah. So in the chamber, he said that he's going to call a special session this spring to get the legislature to pass a constitutional amendment that bans partisan gerrymandering. Now he has pledged to work for independent redistricting, but he seems to be a bit skeptical that can happen under the current political environment in Wisconsin at this point, because
so they're just going to get rid of the whole thing, like just basically.
Yeah, but at least somebody in the higher off, like that's their position. That's what they'll do. And just like I'm not a Trump basher or supporter, and same with Newsom and stuff. They're just playing the game and stuff there. But like, that's the thing. Well, Newsom plays the game. You go, okay, well, Trump, everybody hates what Trump's doing, so I'm going to do it better, right? At least you got some leaders. And look at Jay Nelson in Texas going, no.
Jay Nelson. Nelson.
In Maryland, the legislature is standing up to Governor Wes Moore, who wants to gerrymander his state, and the legislature is saying, no, we're not going to pass this. We're not
That's
going
a
to do that.
Senate president, right? Or
Yeah, it's
something?
the Senate president who's
Yep.
saying that, and yeah, it's good that we are seeing these officials who are willing to stand up for it. Now, whether or not this amendment passes in Wisconsin remains to be seen. But Tony Evers said, if I have to, I'm gonna call you back in August. I'm gonna call you back in September. I'm gonna call you back in December. We're gonna get this to happen. Now the
Very
way,
cool. Like,
yeah,
that's
it's
the
very
kind of
yeah.
leadership. Yay. Good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, and so the way it works in Wisconsin, in order to pass a constitutional amendment, it has to pass the legislature twice in 2 consecutive sessions. So
By 2/3 or by 50% or
that number I need to look into again. But
it's really hard to get this
yeah,
done.
yeah, it's hard to get this done. Obviously, there are still interest in, because he even pointed out in that speech that because we don't have a nonpartisan redistricting process, come 2031, it'll be up to a partisan legislature to be able to redraw these maps again. So you're taking away their power to be able to skew these maps. So if the legislature does it, amazing. But we'll see. But again, it is great to see that these officials are at least offering some sort of contrast to what we're seeing nationally elsewhere.
What else
Totally.
you got? What do you got, Ethan?
What do I got? Well,
Do you
I
want to
get-
talk a
Around the
little bit
polls.
about the killer tomatoes?
Spectacular Killer Tomatoes.
I
Well, we did
mean-
have a pre-screening, not a release. There was a pre-screening on the Midway. That was pretty cool. So 2 big screens. I mean, there's better sound environments and stuff, but it was a pre-screening. Some of the old cast, directors, new cast. We had people flying across the country that are just big Killer Tomato
I
fans.
thought it was killer, and there's plenty of people there. I mean, how many people can say they've seen a movie on a aircraft carrier? I mean, that was cool.
And you know what? People actually, they laughed and nobody said it sucked, So that's
I was cracking
Yeah,
up. Seriously, I
laughing.
thought there was some hilarious
But that movie has
lines. I
such
want
a
to look
great
at it.
that
I wanna see
that
it
movie
again.
has such a great comedic cast though. Like I'm not surprised to hear that. Like I'm not surprised to hear
I mean,
that at all.
there was. I mean, it is surprising how for a low budget movie, there's some pretty recognizable,
Yeah.
good actors and actresses. And look, I'm not even going to plug this too much, but I'm going to give my little short bit on this. Our family is obviously political people. I'm on a podcast called Independent Voter Podcast, right? And in an age when so many movies and different shows are trying to make political points, like what we hoped people get out of it is like, let's just relax, not take everything so seriously, and like, how about we just have that fun without trying to score political points? Like, you notice there's no thing to take away to like, oh, this is so bad or that's so bad. It's like, we hope you just laugh, like for a
Right.
minute, like
Right.
stop trying to score points.
Check your brain at the door.
Yeah.
Like just go in there, and that's how I took it. I thought one of the best parts was when Steve Peace was talking about how, to give you a sense of how irresponsible the movie making was, that none of the people who made the movie had seen it until that very night, when the rest of us were seeing it.
I can attest that is actually true. Of course, they've seen it, all the stuff, but like they were literally, because this is way before the release, right? So they're like, wait, we got to do this and this and this before, because we're about to show this to people.
Yeah.
so they were literally the night, like, till like midnight the night before making like stuff. So nobody had really seen that current version of the movie.
And
Like, oh,
you know
here
what?
it is.
I never heard of a good movie that everything finished right on time. It's always rushing at the end, right? I mean, that's
Well,
what makes it good.
Good movies are relative.
Okay. I'm just saying, like,
It's the difference between a movie and a campaign. Like a campaign, there is an election day that you don't get any more time if you're not ready. With a movie, I guess you kind of can, depending on how much money you want to continue sinking into it, you can
Yeah.
take your time a little bit. But maybe not, because aren't there festival entries and things like that? So
There
like,
are a lot of that, and
Yeah.
we're going through all that process and stuff right now. Yeah.
I felt like when I was watching that movie that it was something that it was like this long conversation, this decades-long conversation that I was just sort of maybe getting a little window into these. And so I didn't understand like some of the older jokes from some of the older movies, but I loved how it all referred back, and I loved how it was self-deprecating, like how it was talking about how the other movies that nobody saw,
Mhm.
like it
Yeah.
made fun of itself.
Nobody
which is-
paid Kara to say all these things. I promise. I will
It's
attest to
true.
this.
It's true. It's true. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it made no sense also. Like, really.
and They also had red vines at the premiere at the event. So I'm sure that made it better. That's her favorite.
That red vines make everything better. They also had tomato sandwiches. They had caprese tomato sandwiches.
Yeah.
That was a first.
No, it was cool. I mean, just the location and everything was pretty cool. But
Yeah, well,
Sean,
congratulations.
what else do we have back in the world of reality and politics that we got to deal with?
Well, I mean, in the Reform Roundup this past week, I had a lengthy feature piece on America Promise, a campaign finance organization that is trying to get an amendment passed called the 4 Hour Freedom Amendment, and which doesn't try to impose any specific type of campaign finance regulations. It just says that Congress and states have the authority to pass reasonable limits as they see fit. So things like in Maine, where they passed that in super PACs measure.
Thanks to Kara.
I love that, where they did that anyway.
Well, and yeah,
we did do that. The people, they, like 74.9% of us.
Well, the
it,
people passed for it, and it was an overwhelming victory for that. But now a court has already ruled it unconstitutional. It's in the appeals process, right, Kara?
Well, yeah, we're at the Court of Appeals,
which was all part of that strategy, right?
Right, yeah, and it's all part of the strategy. But this sort of amendment would allow those type of citizen initiatives, those type of regulations to go through, and I think
how
when
cool
you look,
is that?
Well, how cool is that? Yeah, and then we talk about these very popular initiatives and being, not tone deaf. This is an 80-20 issue itself. People think there's just too much money in politics at this point, and
killing the country.
And we could have a debate about how much influence this is actually having on elections versus the other systemic factors. But yeah, it's so much money is flooding in, and this amendment doesn't, cut off the spigot, but it puts in the mechanisms to control the cash flow for Congress and the states.
Interesting.
And I think that's kind of important when you have an FEC that can't do its job right now. It's unable to act. And of course, we saw recently that Trump finally nominated 2 new people to that commission, although we're about to go into an election.
They're the greatest people.
The greatest.
The best,
because that's all he does. It's the big beautiful going into the FEC, but what that process to confirm them is going to take even longer. So right now we're going into an election process where there is no regulatory agency to monitor any sort of misbehavior done on the part of campaign finance or election rules and regulations. So we could very well see the Wild West of going on in this election cycle. But yeah, it's a very interesting story. It was a great conversation I had with Brian Boyle, who is the chief program officer at that organization. So
and that's an American Promise. That's such a great organization. They're trying to get this constitutional amendment, right?
Yeah. And that's a hard thing. And I think their approach is very interesting. They're laying the groundwork by going to the states first.
State by state by state.
Well, it's very smart. And that's an example of organization. It's very tough to resist the be getting sucked into the partisan world, right? And you get the money, okay, to do it, but do it this way. Now, that is a very legit nonpartisan organization.
Totally.
That's really like, no, this is the right thing to do. We're doing it this way. You can come along or not, but we're not going to turn this into a partisan venture, right?
Right. Great people working in Maine on that for that organization. There's a bunch of great Maine connections to American.
Well, we got Maine. You could have the next independent governor, right?
We do have an independent, Rick Bennett, who's running for governor. Who's I think he's part of American Promise. He is
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's quite a guy, Rick Bennett. He's the one guy who crossed over to support ranked choice voting for the in the legislature. He's a senator.
Full
Republican.
Disclosure, I sent him a few bucks only for that reason, because I thought he had and really just because I was like, this guy had the guts to do it. It wasn't anything else. Like most people in his position wouldn't do it because they didn't have the guts. And I was like, bravo. Like I'm not like.
No,
not that much closer beyond that. I just was like,
disclosure.
Yeah,
like, this guy's ethical here. We know that.
Well, he got guts.
He disenrolled from the Republican Party. He re-enrolled not as an independent, but just no party at all. And he's running for governor. And unfortunately, we don't have ranked choice voting in the governor's general election in Maine. So we're heading into a situation where we're going to have spoilers. We're going to maybe have a split vote.
Plurality winners.
Yeah.
The legislature
The legislature passed a bill to finally give the people what they fully voted for in 2016 and 2018. But, it's going to go before the state Supreme Court, and they're going to give an advisory opinion and about whether or not the Constitution actually allows for such a bill to be passed, which back in 2017, the state Supreme Court said that the Constitution allows for plurality winners. And
That's
so
right.
now, are they
So
going to do
it's
that
the same
again?
people that
Yeah,
are going to have to say, "Oh, we were wrong
right.
in 2017 when we gave you that solemn occasion, when we gave you that opinion about ranked choice voting." So then what we did, of course, is we stripped out the part that the court said was unconstitutional, and we ran the people's veto so that we could get it for all the other elections, but we never got it for governors.
Well, I mean, it's so funny because you even have it. Maine has even expanded it to presidential elections,
Yeah. Yep.
but you can't get it for these state
We can't get it
elections.
for the very election that we wanted it the most for.
It's
And that
crazy.
is how things really work. And that is the saga. And the saga is the best part, really, when you think about it, because for all reforms, you have to have these obstacles that get in the way of the reform, right? And every obstacle that then you get on the other side of, it takes away the playbook from the other side, if that makes sense to you. So like all the mistakes and all the problems, like in 2017, I was underneath my desk when that Supreme Court ruling came in. I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm sure I talked to Chad that day. I wasn't in tears, but it was bad. But now I realize that was such a great thing to have happen, because it forces the reform forward, even though it feels like you're going backward, if that makes any sense to you. The obstacle's the way. It's his famous like Stoic, Marcus Aurelius,
It does.
saying,
Go ahead. Sorry, finish your quote.
no, that's the end of the quote. The obstacle is the way.
All right. Well, I mean, in that vein, you could look at the case we've taken to New Jersey. That's now, we filed a writ to the Supreme Court, but the decision in New Jersey, like what the accomplishment for us was, a judge said it out loud what the issue is, and a judge said, if a voter is torn between a choice of participating and joining a party, they should just join the party to vote in a primary.
Right. So
Right.
that sounds on its face like a terrible thing, right?
Right.
But the fact that the lawsuit prompted the judge to say it out loud shines the light
on that
on the
issue.
obstacle, and that's the issue. Exactly.
And I feel
Chad.
I feel like the more the courts become aware of what the true issue is, the more progress we are seeing. And we are seeing that, where you had that case out of Florida challenging the closed primaries there, make it all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court
Same
actually deliberated, same issue. The Supreme Court justices deliberated hearing the case, which is the furthest any of this litigation has gone so far.
And you'll never hear coverage on this issue other than on Independent Voter News.
Podcast. Independent Voter News. Everyone
That's
come to
right.
Independent Voter News. We are doing so. Ethan, will you just talk about social media for a quick second? Because I know we're just
He's been
engaging
working on this
people.
poll for so long.
Yeah, we got a little
So long.
sidetracked by the
Yeah,
poll. but
Ethan's now too famous with this poll to worry about.
Well, no, I mean, we've been pushing out clips. We get, we found that, like we were talking about earlier, there is a real opposition to the whole two-party system that kind of just needs a bit of energy. They need a representative. So far, we found Jesse Ventura, good old wrestler. He really connects with those people. But I mean, it's great that we're kind of building up this audience that we can talk to and we can show. So when real issues come out, like, an initiative for ranked choice voting, top 5, that type of stuff, we can provide coverage to that as well. And so,
But
yeah.
even among our audiences, what I like it the best, we have spirited discussions. Like, not everybody likes ranked choice voting, right?
Yeah.
And like, not everybody likes, right? And so a lot of people are Democrats or Republicans, and they don't view it as, we need to get rid of them. It's like, no, we need to improve them, and the best way to do it, right? There's all kinds of different perspectives, and like, people, you go, well, you guys have a bias. And I go, of course, I have a bias. Kara has a bias. Ethan has a bias. Sean. The point of what we do is like, how about we actually talk to each other about our biases and our perspectives, and maybe we'll learn something from each other.
And as a result of this approach, now we've seen collaborations between the open primaries movement and the ranked choice voting movement to try to combine those efforts. Places like Alaska, I know in California, you're trying to get that off the ground, and we're seeing public support for it in our polls that we've done on this. Big support for it. Yeah.
Because it makes sense. It makes sense. And once people start to connect that they can change, that if we change the incentives, we can change the outputs. If we change the inputs, we can change the outputs.
Mhm.
This is powerful stuff that we've kind of been onto for a long time. And, people are going to catch up with us. Don't.
And I think the more that we talk about it, the more we have these conversations, the more trust people can have with us. Because that's something that we talked about a little earlier about how, there's these popular reforms, but people may not necessarily trust the messenger. And I think one thing that nonpartisan reformers have had to struggle with is building that trust with people because they don't know us. They don't know these reform organizations. And so they have to listen to the partisan narratives that try to tell them that what election reformers are doing is going to be complex and too confusing and voters won't get it, right? But having these conversations and getting more into the space of building it builds that trust as well. So
Well, yeah, and once people put it together, say, look, it's the right side of the political aisle that hates these reforms in states they control, and it's the left side of the political aisle that hates these reforms in the states that they control. They realize, oh, it's not a partisan issue. It's about control, right?
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, we just want competition and to realign the incentives so that more voters matter. It's really
Exactly.
that simple.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
And maybe someday we could have a House of Representatives and Senate where it wasn't just half standing up and clapping instead of, maybe
Yeah.
instead of like in Wisconsin, like what they're describing that happened at, congratulations, Governor Tony Evers, for having your state be unified with your vision. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. One thing that Trump did in the State of the Union talk about the stock trading ban. He was like,
Right. Oh,
yeah,
good point, Ethan.
Yeah.
Yeah, he came out for it, and believe it or not, some of the Democrats did stand up. That was one of the only times that they stood up, which was great. Then, of course, he had to like throw in some, mean comment about Nancy Pelosi.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the president he can't just even take the win, He's got to
help himself.
Yes, it was like, he pointed out like, he was like, he singled her out. And he's like, there you are. And then he's like, and now we need to stop the stock trading, pass the stock trading ban on Congress. Like just
funny.
saying.
Trump makes such a big deal about the Democrats not clapping for him when he brought out Team USA, the hockey team. He was like, "Oh, this is the only thing that the Democrats will stand up and clap for," and things like that. He made a big deal about that, but then he will go on to insult them and wonder why they're not standing up and clapping for him. So
sometimes he's his own worst enemy, in my opinion.
No doubt about that. I think that's my opinion too. He's definitely his own worst enemy. But I want to say something about the State of the Union though that really actually did really tug at my heartstrings. The girls' summer camp, where all those kids were at summer camp and the floods came and so many of them died. So at the State of the Union last night, there was a little girl called Millie Kate McClamen, and this guy who rescued her, this Coast Guard rescue helicopter guy named Scott Ruskin, and he saved Millie Kate from the rising waters, but he saved apparently 164 people. That day. He was awarded the Legion of Merit for extraordinary heroism. As cynical as I can be, that just, can you imagine? He saved 164 people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, it's
and
good
it was his
that
first. It was his first time too.
Yeah, it's
also
great that we still can
Wow.
have these moments where, again, it's one of those moments where Democrats gave a standing ovation, Republicans gave a standing ovation. And it's good to see that we can still have these moments where we can put politics aside and recognize true heroism when we see it in the
we're a
face of
country
what.
that produced this person who
Yeah,
had the ability and wherewithal and strength and courage, and then you have this little girl, Millie Kate, standing next to him. That made me feel better about our country than even the USA hockey players did.
See, we have reasons to be optimistic, and Ethan and some of the other, development team are working away on the back end of a lot of big things coming for IVN, Independent Voter Project. We got programs we're doing for this year to increase turnout. We're moving forward on some reforms. We're getting together every week on the podcast. Like, for us, I see some brightness ahead, and I hope
That's right.
And for all of you who do tune in and come to IVN, listen to this podcast, thank you. I hope you join us engage in the comments. Send us an email. If you have something you disagree with or want to write something yourself, send it to us. We love publishing stuff from you folks, from our listeners and our supporters. So find us online, find us on social media, go to ivn.us, visit Independent Voter Project, and come back next time. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Stay warm, Kara.
Thank you, Chad. It's snowing again.
Bye, everybody.
This is the Independent Voter Podcast, sponsored by the Independent Voter Project and produced by OLAS Media. Remember, you can always find the Independent Voter Podcast or the How It Really Works series at ivn.us. Follow and subscribe at olasmedia.com.
OLAS Media.